Idaho. Today is gonna be a fun adventure day.
Hello adventurers and welcome back to my channel. Today we are visiting the Idaho Potato Museum, and inside there are a lot of interesting things that I'm very intrigued by. Already it's starting out to be something absolutely epic. It's something that should be on everybody's bucket list, but let's go inside. Okay guys, we're here and it's small but mighty, but the gift shop had some cool stuff that I really enjoyed. Now, the reason why I wanted to stop here is because everybody's heard of the Idaho potatoes, but we don't really know that much more about them, so this is supposed to explain everything. And we start off with the origins of the Idaho potato. Originally, they came from the Andes Mountains of South America, and then became one of the most important food crops in the world. Now, this tool right here has been used since the 13th century, and it was primarily used in the Andes, and you can see how they would use it right here to be able to plant and harvest the potatoes. And you could see that they would carry the large sacks of potatoes using their head and neck to stabilize it onto their back. This was back-breaking work, but it brought the potato to us all. But in addition to that, they were able to make the first dried potato, which was pretty incredible because that made it last longer, because we all know that if you leave potato out too long, it spoils. So here we learn about how in the Andes Mountains, everything became possible with the potato, but then it moved on and started to grow and change and find its way to other countries. And along the way, we can find out a little bit more about how some of those potatoes are now used, but specifically here in Idaho, why they are so popular. One of the things I really like about this museum is they have little potato facts, and they're at a lower level so that they can engage with the kiddos and give them little fast fun facts, like to convince the people of France to farm and eat the potato, Marie Antoinette often put potato blossoms in her hair. Now in 1537, the Spanish explorers reached Peru and they were looking for gold, but instead they found the potato. And you might think, gold, potato, the value is not there, but they were needing something to take back with them that could really revolutionize the way that people were able to provide for themselves. And so they picked up on the potato, and in doing so, that changed everything. From there, you can see how many places the potato went in a very short amount of time. From Peru to Spain in 1570, and then it made its way from Spain to Italy in 1587. It made it from Portugal to Africa in 1600s. It went all the way around Africa and made it to India and China in the 1600s. And by the end of the 1600s, China and Japan, as well as all of the Asian continents, had access to the potato. But in addition, Italy brought them to France. France brought them to all the other Europe and Russian countries. Portugal brought them to Ireland, which of course we know became a huge, huge piece of their agriculture. And then they managed to land all the way over here in Bermuda. And then they went to Virginia in 1621. You often don't think about the simple nature of a potato and how much of a resource it really is. But by the time that it made it over here to the United States, we were needing that. We had limited supplies and not a whole lot of things, and they really needed something that could help them out. The potato became that, but it became that for a lot of countries who were going through various kinds of agricultural changes and shifts. The potato provided a lot of nutrients and value. It provided those starchy things that helped to sustain life, but also it gave them some different kinds of ideas. Frederick the Great of Prussia grew potatoes in his flower garden for the beauty, and he was convinced that they had nutritional value. He forced his subjects to grow them also. This guy right here is Antoine Augustine, and he became a vocal promoter of the potato as a food source for France and throughout Europe in the 1700s. And then, as we were talking about with the Irish, they were forced to leave their homes and board ships around 1848 because of the potato famine. Then there's this guy, Luther Burbank. He was an American botanist who developed the official Idaho potato. See, at first they weren't called Idaho potatoes, they were called Irish potatoes, but we needed something that would work in the climate and temperament of the climate that we were in. And so the Idaho potato became king, and it was kind of like a designer potato that was created to have the best of all the things that we needed, but also the ability to create it in a place that never had that crop before. Now, you might be saying, why Idaho?
Fair, very fair. But the reason why they chose Idaho was the climate, the soil, and the irrigation. In fact, Idaho receives less than 9 inches of rainfall annually, and so most of the water for the potatoes comes from irrigation. From this. Now, this is the Eastern Snake River Plain Aquifer. It covers over 10,000, almost 11,000 square miles, and it's about the size of Lake Erie. Now, this aquifer is a body of rock and sediment that offers unlimited quantities of water for the potato farmers throughout their growing season. And you can see in relation to that, this is the map of where the potatoes are grown. Only 10% is on the southwest corner, 40 in the central, but 50 right here closest to that aquifer where the grounds are considered to be the most fertile. And the state's average of 5 million potatoes is grown in these 3 regions every year. Now, we talked about the railroad and how the railroad made all this possible. A lot of places didn't have access to goods and services for the longest time, but the railroad changed all of that. So growing in areas and having points where they could pick up the goods to send them off to other places was vital in the transportation of these things, so that people in, like, oh, say Texas could have a potato from Idaho. And so because of that, a lot of these communities would be stationed somewhere near the rail line so that they could be picked up. And as the rail lines expanded, so did the production of the potato. On this map, you can see the different colors. Those are each rail lines. The purple is indicating the Union Pacific. The greenish color is the Oregon Short Line. This reddish tone right here is the Utah Northern. And then up top, you have the Northern Pacific. And so right here in this area that we're located currently, you can see there's a convergence of all of the railroads. And this station that was right here, well, we're standing at it. This was actually one of the rail stations that was along that short line railroad. It was the replacement station for the original station. So this one was built in about 1913. Instead of just giving it up, it's part of the story of the potato. So they instead turned it into the museum. Small but mighty, tons of information, great brain wrinkles, and might I add, lots of character. And so it's really interesting to see how the potato industry might not have been possible without the rail industry. They go hand in hand, as do so many of the crops. But there's so much more to this. So we're going to find out what growing a potato over time has looked like and what the climate of bringing the railway here has been, because it's quite a story. And it all starts here with the Idaho potato farming history. Idaho is the largest present-day producer of the potato still in the nation, and the state's cultural history and economic development is forever tied to its introduction. Now, here we can find a variety of different iconic historic photos that tell us about the process. For example, this is a 2 single row digger at work, and it's a harvest picture from around the 30s. Horses were used until the 50s, we find out. Potato shippers would wait their turn to load their crops onto the waiting boxcars, and this is from 1901. This is the 1870s when the Snake River was diverted so that they could have canal systems to irrigate. And this is what sacking the potatoes up looked like in burlap bags. The fun part about this is if you come and buy something from the store, which is just beyond those doors, and you get enough, you get to put in a potato bag. I think that's so fun. But as you can see, those are more primitive pictures of what it started out looking like with the horses and the wagons. Now it looks a little bit different. Now a single farmer can do a lot more with a lot less. And even though the equipment and machinery is very expensive, they're able to cover a lot more ground. Potato plants produce better when they're in sequence with other crops because they do rotation of crops. And this is in the fall, and the ground is typically ripped and then plowed. And then as you keep going in the spring, the field is loosened on the surface so that they can add moisture. And then rows are marked, and often they use fertilizer at this time so that they can get ready for planting. We learn here that depending on the variety of potato, that seed pieces are planted 8 to 13 inches apart, and they're approximately 3 feet in between the rows. Now, depending on where you are in the state, from August to October, they're harvesting the potatoes. Usually they start in the west in August, and then they move over to the east in October. And it's pretty fascinating to see, again,
These are not horse-drawn carriages anymore. It's much more high-tech. It is much more of a science, and we've learned a lot since we started out.
Speaking of learning, fast fact, the average American eats approximately 110 pounds of potatoes each year.
It's a lot of carbs. That's a lot of carbs.
Of course, inside these cases, they have products that are all possible as a result of potatoes. Without potatoes, we wouldn't have needed any of these things. There is also a small video here that you can watch that tells you a little bit more about the potato industry in its most humble beginnings. And you won't believe this. This is the Guinness Book World Record qualifying largest potato crisp. The potato crisp might look familiar because these are basically potato crisps.
In fact, on the old containers, you can see they were labeled as potato crisps. That's front and center.
So back to this guy. It is 25 inches by 14 inches and it weighs 5.4 ounces. It is 920 calories altogether, according to this. And it's the equivalent of 80 regular Pringles potato crisps. That's good to know.
What is the difference between a crisp and a chip? A crisp is made from dehydrated pieces of potato, and then they flatten it out and create a shape. That's a crisp. Now down here we have a ton of different kinds of potato peelers, including some of the more fancy ones there in the back. Top of this building that we can go into, these are all potato mashers.
And of course there's more museums, so we're about to learn how potatoes are processed.
I bet you never thought whenever you tuned in today's video we were going to get so many brain wrinkles about potatoes. Well, maybe you did because you saw the title, but did you know all these things?
So this graph represents the average distribution of potato grades in a harvest load of potatoes, and the consumers often think that the prices that they see reflected at the grocery store affect the farmer's profitability for his crops, but actually it's only a small percentage of the actual quality of the potatoes. Load accounts for the wide range in pricing. So for example, you see 50% processed potatoes that are undersized, rough, or defective. Then 30% is the consumer size, which is ideally 4 to 8 ounces. And then you get over into these, which are the larger potato sizes. So it's a much different representation, and it allows you to see how food distribution sizes affect also pricing.
For example, if you have a year that's not quite as productive, that's going to be reflected at the pricing because you may have a whole bunch of defective potatoes from that end up pulling you down even more. So there's lesser quantity of the good stuff. But like there's a lot of potatoes that are under or oversized, that's also going to change what you see at the distribution point, which is your grocery store, and so on and so forth. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. It's a burlap sack outfit and then also a jacket.
Another fast fact, 62% of Idaho's potato harvest is used in processed products, 29 are fresh, and 9 are grown for certified seed. Which brings us here, talking about the processing activity, which started out as just extracting the starch, as we see here, but now they actually produce potato flour and potato meal also.
Believe it or not, at one point in time, they were producing for World War II so that they could have potatoes for the troops. I think that that's pretty fabulous. But also, they went into other versions of things that they could do. They started doing the instant potatoes, which are just dried potato flakes, so that they would last longer and have more shelf sustainability. And as we see this advance, we get to see more and more products that spurred from the humble potato.
But it all has to start somewhere, and that's with raw receiving and storage, which then brings them down to steam peeling, trimming and inspecting, slabbing, pre-cooking, pre-cooling, and then cooking, which then brings them to mixing, conditioning, drying, sifting, packaging, and then finally off to the consumer.
See, even for us to receive a regular potato, just a single regular potato, it has to go through an inspection point. It has to be made sure that it's the right size, the right color, no imperfections. It then has to go through a cleaning and then a bagging. And that's just for a regular potato. But when you get into these mixed products, such as the dehydrated flakes, or like the variations on potatoes you find in the frozen section, there's so many steps. And so this is just kind of a glance at what that looks like. And then of course, each one of these has a little paragraph. I definitely encourage you to come here and read through this because it's pretty fascinating. But at the same time, there's some more here, so let's keep moving. Now we get into variety, and we all have seen most of these somewhere at our store. From the russet to the red to the gold to the fingerling, there are 4 major categories, but within those you can see there are also variations. Using the red as an example, the Cal Red, the Red Lesotho, and the Norland Red, you can see each one of them has a criteria for which it passes and describes it. And if you don't have that criteria, you don't have that potato. You have an error in the system somewhere. And so you can see that through all of these, it all takes a slightly different approach to how you cook or what you might use for what kinds of things. For example, you might want to use something that has a buttery flavor for like a steak dinner. But this guy right here, it says it makes for a good potato salad. Come over here and you see that some of them are higher in starch than others. Some of them have a more waxy finish. Some of them are better fresh. Some are better frozen. Some are better dehydrated. Not all of them are the same though. Which brings us to our next fast fact. 300,000 acres of Idaho potatoes are harvested per year. That's 13 billion pounds of potatoes. Now in here we have a cinema, so we're about to go check this out.
Probably best not to mention this to our wives. Stop by our booth.
So how did the potato overall change the world? Well, it gave the world more food security. And it goes on to say when Spanish explorers sailed to South America in search of gold, they discovered what the real gold was, which was a potato. And from there, it was able to change the face of America. And before the potato and corn, they did not have intensive fertilization, and European living standards left quite a bit to be desired. So this allowed billions of people, first in Europe and then around the world, to escape poverty. It also introduced potato chips, and potato chips are the #1 best-selling snack in the entirety of the world, and the snack food has been around since 1853. And without potatoes, there wouldn't have been French fries, which started being sold at the very first McDonald's when it opened up in Des Plaines, Iowa. There also wouldn't be dehydrated potatoes. And the dehydrated potatoes are the good source of nutrients, including complex carbs, vitamin C, B6, and potassium. And products made from dehydrated potatoes are easy to chew, swallow, and digest, and they're considered hypoallergenic. Believe it or not, the invention of the TV is even on this list. And it says that right here that the man Philo T. Farnsworth's claim to fame was the invention of the television. However, he was naturally gifted as a science student, and because of his dream that he had for the television, he was unsure of how he could take the picture from one place to the next and use it as a transmitter. And he ended up turning to something super familiar, and it was his inspiration that changed the way that we see things now. And, he started off just as a regular guy. What I mean by regular is he was working on a potato farm. And so he had this vision while he was doing that. It gave him a place. It gave him the know-withal to operate machinery. He tinkered a lot, and then the TV was born. Wild, right? And then of course there's Mr. Potato Head. As far as toys go, Mr. Potato Head is one of the most popular toys of all times. And did you know that during harsh times, whenever they originally started out, they started out just making the little individual pieces, and then you would stick them into your potato. But as potatoes became more and more scarce during war times, they created the plastic version that we know now, instead of using the body parts in the regular Mr. Potato Head. It also implores us to look to the future, because the future is bright and filled with potatoes. NASA has some things going on that bring it back to, again, the potato, and many, many more. So this is pretty cool. I've really enjoyed this part of the museum, but there's some more things here, so I'm gonna go check it out and see what we can find. Oh my goodness, this is an incredibly large amount of potatoes. And somewhere down in the basement, it looks like there's like a little potato family being couch potatoes. I mean, it is kind of funny that they have couch potatoes. I think that kind of goes to the nature of the museum. They know that it's something that is a wonderful product that so many people use. Again, 110 pounds of consumed potatoes per year. But they also know that along the way, you have to have a little bit of humor,
when thinking about something as simple as a potato. So here they have some different things, and then as we go in here we learn a little bit more about the manufacturing process and things like that. But there's some wild stuff in this haul. Let me show you.
You are home.
Oh my goodness.
Unload the spud.
They talk.
This is my wife, Peter Pat, and our youngest, Peter Tom. Whoa, not yet, dear. I'm still trying to talk to these fine folks and explain our situation. So give me just a sec. You see, we've been down here for several months now, and I've grown quite fond of this place. But we're going to have to be moving on soon. It's getting close to harvest time, or as I like to call it, the Great Potato Migration.
Ooh, I was told about these. We definitely have to check these out. These are VR sets. Specifically, it's potato VR. So we're supposed to sit down and then hold the headset up, and then we'll be able to see what's going on. Okay, so I'm gonna sit down. Okay, and then this goes over my head. Ooh, it went up. And then I push it down. Ooh, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Oh, wow, I am harvesting. Oh, this is weird. Oh, this is super weird. I'm on the tractor. I can look down and I see everything. Those aren't my feet though. And I'm facing my friend. Oh no. Sadly to you guys, it just kind of looks like this, but it is really neat. So I'm on the tractor, like I said, and you can just kind of experience what it's like to harvest the potatoes. And it's a 3D, so you can kind of go in any direction. This is cool. Wasn't expecting this at all. Now, just past that, we learn about being producers and consumers and how that kind of happens. And here you can see an original line with the world's largest potato size model right here. It was grown in Idaho, and this was a russet, and it was from Lakeview Ag in American Falls, Idaho. And this is Russ Feringer and his family. And the potato was 7 pounds, 2 ounces. This was in October of 2018. And this bronze weighs 60 pounds. So just saying. Now, I didn't know that there was such an interesting, science behind the grading of the potatoes themselves. So for example, you can see how in these back graphics, it shows, irregular potatoes, ones that have greening on them, 14-ounce potatoes, like this one right here. And it says that the 14 ounces could be a meal in theirself. The standards for grade number 1 are very high to get into this category. And then also you can see here how that they would sort things on this. Originally, this was from the 1890s to 1920s. Technology's changed a lot now, so this is much more high tech. But these are some of the girls. In 1943, school was let out so that the kids could help with the harvest. Of course, farming could not be done without some form of tractor. And if you look at tractors in this versus in the VR simulator, you will see the vast difference in technology when it comes to harvesting, from the horses to something like this to something like in the VR set. Now, this says it is a Milestone Cutter, and it was used in the 60s. And this has a belt on the back. It goes through this, and then it also has this guy right here. So I'm assuming it would pull them through kind of like in this direction. But there is an illustration of what this looks like also, so we can find out if we were right. Sometimes looking at the machines, they look like they could work one way, but seeing it actually in action is super handy. So I appreciate that they have the televisions here to show us more about what this process actually looks like, as so many potatoes are coming down that line. Additionally, look high, look low. There are historic photos everywhere. There are illustrations.
everywhere, machines that you would have found used throughout the years, and even scales that they would have used to weigh these things. So many mashers. So many mashers. Now up top there is another little section here, and that's the potato lab. Did you know that you can conduct all sorts of interesting experiments using a potato? Well, I know that my mom is a science teacher and she's told me about several of them. Let's go see if I've seen some of these. Okay, there's a color wheel, a chip mobile, a Spuddy Buddy, and a potato battery. I've actually seen a couple of these, but the nice thing about this is you can come here, take a picture, and then you have an activity to do with your kiddos whenever you go back home. I think that's really neat. There's also a walkie-talkie and a propulsion pipe, and then the largest conglomerate of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head parts I have ever seen in a single place. In fact, I'm going to use this one right here, and I'm going to create a potato. It's really easy. If you've never played with a Mr. Potato Head before, you just find a hat or hair, you put it on, you find a nose of your choice, and you put it on, and then you just create with eyes and a mouth whatever design you would like. I'm gonna put one of these together. I'll show you what I have. Okay, here we go. I have my iconic glasses on, just some regular shoes because we're an adventure potato. I used to only pose with my tongue out, so I figured this was very fitting. What do you guys think?
Is it me? This was super fun. I really enjoyed this activity. I haven't played with a Mr. Potato Head or a Mrs. Potato Head in a bit. All I needed was a camera to go in this hand and we would be twinsies. Now there are some other cool things here as well, including a word search, famous potato quotes, a coloring with Spuddy, and a bouncing taters game. I think I'm gonna have to do the word search. Okay, let me get this all set up here. Okay.
So I just have to follow the instructions. This mouse is very sensitive, so this is gonna be interesting. Okay. And it walks you through everything and then tells you you can get started. And here we go. So I need to find all of the potatoey words. Oh no, here's peel, peel. Okay, mash. So mash is right here. Cool, cool. Bake and then fry. Okay. Oh, here's bake. It's backwards. And then fry right here. Oh, very sensitive. And boil. Boil is an easy one. There we go. Oh, that's so fun. That is such a cute thing. You can spend a lot of time here.
And I love a good teachable moment. We have to go over here.
Look at all of these potato heads. They have the exclusive Star Wars ones, the Marvels, the Wizard of Oz, the Pop-Taters, which are Ghostbusters, the Looney Tunes, and then all of the big ones, the small ones, and everything in between. Oh, this is so cool. And then, of course, this right here, Idaho's most famous potato. I mean, they even have something about the Mr. Potato Head Derby, which I think is absolutely epic. So as you can see, this might be a museum about potatoes, but it has a sense of humor, a lot of fun. It's fascinating for all ages. And they also have a restaurant attached. And so you can get something that is an official Idaho potato right here. And for you guys who travel, this is also on Harvest Host. So check it out because you can stay right here at the Idaho Potato Museum, which is what I'm gonna do later on this evening. I just have to figure out where I'm supposed to park, but this is epic. So that's gonna do it for us here today at the Idaho Potato Museum. It has been absolutely so much fun. I have permagrin. You can't come into a place like this and not have a little bit of joy and a little bit of curiosity. I've really appreciated you guys coming along with me. So remember guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Find a Mr. Potato Head, I'm just saying. Just saying. Till next time, bye. This place was epic.